There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Dave Gerhardt. Dave is the Director of Marketing at Drift. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Today, we're going to be talking about why marketing needs to adapt to our on-demand world, which I think is going to be some very interesting stuff. But before we get into today's topic, maybe you can tell our listeners a little about yourself and what you and the Drift team are up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So I run the marketing team at Drift. Our mission is to help businesses sell more faster, and we do that through messaging. So we make messaging software that helps marketing teams generate more leads and sales teams close deals, hopefully a whole lot faster than the traditional way. Been here for almost 2 years now. The company was started by David Cancel and Elias Torres, who actually built the product over at HubSpot. And now we're here kind of digging into all the challenges of traditional marketing automation and having a lot of fun doing it.
That's great. Yeah. And, it speaks certainly to your area of expertise. Messaging is so important these days, and you're also taking advantage of emerging technologies. But, it's kind of that where the rubber meets the road. I mean, the messaging it can obviously benefit from the tools and technologies that are available, but it has to resonate with people. You're not just trying to talk to pieces of other tools and pieces of software. It has to resonate with those people you're actually trying to connect with. And today, again, I mentioned why marketing needs to adapt to our on-demand world. Let's kind of talk about how we got here in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So, I think if you just think about how you communicate in your personal lives every single day, like we're on, iMessage and Facebook Messenger, and, me doing this podcast for 20 minutes today is probably the least amount of time I'll have spent on Slack, right? Like talking to all my, our team at Drift. And so that's the reality of it. We're all using messaging in our personal lives. And then because everybody has a smartphone, everybody has, access to the internet. If you're listening to this podcast, like that's the world that we live in, right? And we expect answers in real time. And as consumers, like not as like if I take my marketing hat off for a second, like as a person, if I go to somebody's website or walk into their store and I can't find what I'm looking for, I'll go on to the next one. And then we just expect to get those answers in real time. But the thing that's broken for B2B companies across the board is using like traditional marketing software where it's all about gated content and lead forms and email nurturing. It's the equivalent of like somebody comes into your store and nobody's there to greet them. But then the second that they leave your store, you send them postcards, and that's when you start marketing to try to get them back. And so, the reality of it is that we all expect answers in real time on demand when we're buying things in our personal lives or talking to our friends, but that's not the experience that we have with most businesses, right? With most businesses, you go to their website, you fill out a form, and then you wait. And so something, has got to give, and that's really what we're focused on every day at Drift.
I am in love with that analogy you just made. I've never heard anyone sort of put it in those terms, but it makes a lot of sense. You're there, you're used to getting that sort of, like you said, sort of on-demand assistance, but, you're just sort of passively checking it out. And then once you've left, that's when they're trying to contact you. And it's kind of like, well, I'm not used to that. You've already missed your shot.
Yeah, I'll give you a real example. So we do a lot of webinars at Drift. And a couple months ago, we needed to go and get more new webinar software because we ran out of our seats on the existing plan that we were on. And so I went to this website. I went to the company's website, keep in mind, we were already paying them. So they already had my credit card on file. And I went to go upgrade. And the only way to upgrade, the only way to give them more of my money was to call them. And that was so ridiculous to me. It was like, I'm live on your site right now. I'm ready to give you more money. No questions asked. And I had to call them. And so sure enough, like I didn't call them, right? I sent them an email and I didn't have time to wait for them to get back to me. So what did I do? I did what we all do. I went over to Google. I typed the company's name. I'm not going to put them on blast here, but I typed the company's name and I typed, webinar software alternative, and I found the next best thing. And I went to that company's website. I was able to get connected with someone in their sales team right away, and I bought that product and I switched. And that was just to me like, oh my God, this is the thing that I've been preaching. Like I just lived this firsthand. Yep. And then of course, after I had already bought from the other company, then for the next 2 weeks, I couldn't shake that sales rep from the other company. He's like calling me every day, emailing me every day. I'm like, come on, dude, you lost your shot. I'm already gone. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, a little too late. Yeah.
And the other thing that we think of a lot is like my favorite example is the Apple Store, because the Apple Store, like not to use a cliche Apple example, but like everything is there for you, right? You can just walk in, you can go pick up a laptop, an iPhone, an iPad. You can play around with anything before ever having to talk to sales. Now, imagine if that experience was like you went to go pick up a new MacBook and right before you touched it, one of the Apple sales reps hopped in. He's like, hey, Jonathan, before you do this, can I get you to fill out this form? I want to make sure that you're qualified. And you're like, what? I'm already in your store. Like, I'm already here. What are you talking about? And that's the experience that most people have on their websites today. And it's not to say that didn't work, right? There's still a lot of companies who make a lot of money doing that. The challenge is it's just like that's not how people actually want to buy. And technology has gotten so good today that like the reason forms existed in the first place is because the sales team didn't want to deal with bad leads, right? They only want to deal with the qualified people. But now with bots and AI, like the technology is actually good enough to be able to qualify somebody on your website before passing them off to sales.
Yeah. That's a great point. And one of the points that you had made before the show that when we were sort of emailing back and forth is that, with all the competition and noise, you can actually win by being a brand that people love. It's interesting because a lot of this episode, we're talking about the human element and, being the brand that people love is like almost an emotional response. And that's kind of what you and your team decided to do.
Yeah, this is the one that kind of punches me right in the gut when I think about it, because there's so much noise and there's so much competition everywhere today. Like if you go, my favorite example is talking about Product Hunt. Like just go to there's new products on Product Hunt every single day. And if you just go to one of them and you scroll down a little bit, you're probably going to find like the second or third comment, somebody's going to be saying, oh, yeah, well, how is this Nike shoe different than what Reebok already has, right? There's just there is so much noise and so much competition today that it's really, really hard to stand out just based on features alone. And even if you do market, even if your strategy was to say, no, we actually do make a better widget, right? People are so skeptical to actually believe that because that's what every company wants to tell you. And so the big thing that we're passionate about, and this comes from our David, our founder and CEO, is like that brand. Building a brand is the way that you can build a moat around your company today. And if you think about, it's the reason why people like you and I make decisions, and I'm sure you could think of a brand right now. Like there's a reason why we make decisions to spend more with brands that we really love, even though I could go elsewhere and get what I wanted to get, whether that's coffee, whether that's a pair of shoes, whether that's a software product. And so we choose to make business decisions based on the things people that we actually want to work with. And so that's why, we care so much about brand here at Drift. And that's why we're really trying to use it as a differentiator, but also tell that story and tell people hey, you can also use brand as a differentiator.
Yeah. Ordinarily, I kind of try and steer clear of talking about, a particular brand or company during the show. But, I do want to talk about Drift because we're talking about things that you and your team have actually put into place, strategies that you've implemented yourselves. It's not necessarily something that you're selling. It's just this is a good business practice. And you had mentioned talking about the CEO before. and that I think one of the things was that you were justified in making this switch because it's about alignment, right? I mean, your CEO was very much on board with this idea that
Totally.
hey, we're gonna stop doing gated content. We're gonna get rid of using lead forms.
Yeah. So after we stopped using lead forms and we wrote about it and told everybody about it, the number one question that I got in my inbox or LinkedIn or wherever people message me was, hey, do you have 10 minutes to catch up? I want to see how you got buy-in on that. Like, I'm on board with that idea, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it because, that's the way we've always done it. And everybody wanted to know, like, how can I get rid of the lead form? Like, do the same thing you guys did. And my answer at first was like, well, I hate to break it to you, but the reason it was easy for me as a marketing person was that my boss, our CEO, was totally on board. In fact, the idea came from him. And if you think about it, I'm sure you know this, like a lot of the issues, almost all the issues in marketing and sales come down to alignment, right? Or maybe more like anything in business comes down to people and alignment. And when he stopped caring, he told me, look, I don't care about blog traffic, blog subscribers, website traffic, any social followers. I don't care about any of those vanity metrics. I care about revenue, right? And if we're doing something that's going to help drive revenue, that's all that matters. That's the only number that you need to share. And so he was completely, he set the tone for us making the decision. It wasn't like I had this idea of like, let's get rid of lead forms and then I got to go pitch him on it and that makes the whole thing. Like, of course not, right? I like my job. I wasn't going to suggest something like that, right? When it comes from the top down, then it's easier. And so I think that just speaks to, and if you're doing marketing in a place, and this is a conversation like I've had with a lot of marketers and advice that I've learned is just like, if you're doing marketing in a place where you don't actually love what you're doing and you don't feel like you're passionate about it or your whole team is rowing in the same direction or you feel like you're on the same page, then like you can go and do marketing somewhere else. Like we're hiring at Drift, right? Like there's plenty of marketing jobs open out there. I know this because at least once a week somebody asks me like, hey, do you know any good marketers? We're hiring. So like, you don't have to be complacent in your job if what you're doing, if you don't feel like you're aligned. If you want to create content that's not gated, then go and find somebody who's doing that versus, nobody being able to see what's going on in your world. And that's my long rant. As you can tell, I kind of get fired up about that, but I think it's marketing is going to be really hard for you if you are not on the same page as the rest of your company. And that could be because they're wrong and you're right, or you're right and they're wrong.
Yeah, like you said, the important thing is alignment. If you and your team are moving in the same direction, I mean, you're not fighting an uphill battle constantly. But this idea is it can rub people the wrong way, right? I mean, what do you mean? We're giving up, we're giving up our lead forms, we're giving up data, we're giving up so much. We're just giving away. How do we track these people? How do we track these metrics? How do we email blast the visitors to our site? On and on and on. Not everyone's CEO is going to sort of be on board with this idea, but what's the answer to that? What are the benefits? What are some things maybe that our listeners can take back to their businesses today and sort of either test out or implement or whatever it is?
Yeah. So first I'll get right to the point and I'll cut right to the look, I love leads. Okay. I'm a marketer. I am gold on how many leads I generate. I have a goal here at Drift and that's what I'm held to. So even though we don't do gated content, that's still my goal. I have a number that I need to hit. It's what day is today? It's almost the last day of the quarter. So I'm feeling the crunch, right? Like I'm there with you. But I'm telling you that there are other ways to generate leads than just gate your content. And the way that works for us at Drift is to make all of our content free. And so that is from our video to our podcast to our blog. It's completely free. It's ungated because we want it to spread as wide as possible. And that's because what we do at Drift is applicable to so many businesses, right? It's a lead generation and messaging app for your website. So any business with a website could use Drift. And so we don't want to limit who sees that. Now we have tools within Drift that we use to capture leads so we can maintain that there's a certain level of quality. So when somebody might be on a piece of content and the bot might hop in and say, hey there, how many people are on your team? And you say 10 and it says, oh great. By the way, you do want to book a demo. Or there's ways that we can only show messages to people who are at B2B SaaS companies with greater than 100 employees and they can still read the whole piece of content but not have to gate it. So there's kind of two nuggets in there. Number one is there are other ways to generate leads than just gating forms and gating content with forms. And what we found is by making our content as wide and as open as possible, instead of getting 0.5% or 1% of the people on our website to fill out a form, we're able to have conversations with 20% of our website visitors every single day. And then the second part of that is just, this is more towards our philosophy and what we believe in brand, is that like information is free now. Anybody can go find anything that they want. So I want to make sure our stuff is everywhere. I want our stuff on Instagram, on Snapchat, on video, on YouTube, on our blog, on our podcasts, on SlideShare. I want our brand to be everywhere so we get that association versus really narrowing the audience of who would see it because it's gated behind a form.
Yep, makes a lot of sense, Dave. And if any of our listeners out there are interested in, of course, accessing all of this free content that you've got out there, or even following up with you to learn a little bit more about, adapting to this sort of on-demand world, finding out, how to build that emotional moat, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, our website is not surprisingly drift.com, so you can go there. I'm at Dave Gerhardt on Twitter. Try to hang out there a lot and chat with people. But come check out our stuff and say hi and see if you think that it might work for your business. And I would love to chat more and see if you could share ideas and maybe prove each other wrong.
Perfect. Well, sincerely, Dave, thanks so much for your time on the show today. It was a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.